Next up is Senator Keohokalole. I first came across his name when I first came back to Hawaii, and he was the legislator who asked the Legislative Reference Bureau to explore ways that our state could be more like Portugal in its drug policy. Needless to say, this is America, and we don't quite have the public infrastructure that Portugal has, but maybe we'll get there one day. Senator Keohokalole is a proud 7th generation resident of the 24th Senate District, including Kaneohe and Kailua. He serves on the Senate leadership team as an assistant majority whip and is currently the chair of the Commerce and Consumer Protection Committee, which is responsible for business regulation, including insurance, banking, telecommunications, public utilities, licensing, and consumer protection. He also serves as a member of the Hawaiian Affairs and Transportation, Culture and the Arts Committees, and is the co-chair of the Native Hawaiian Caucus. Senator Keohokalole received a BA from the University of Hawaii at Manoa and a law degree from the William S. Richardson School of Law. He is married to his wife, Ku'ulani, and together they have 3 children. Mahalo, Senator Keohokalole.
No question, I just gotta go in.
Yeah? Okay. Questions for later.
Sure.
Don't filibuster us now.
No, it's okay. I think the best place to start is where we left off at the end of the legislative session in 2023 that adjourned the first week of May. For, I believe, the first time, I'm not sure, but I think for the first time, an adult use legalization bill was heard and passed out of the Hawaii State Senate this last year by a vote of 22-3. So there are 25 senators in the Hawaii State Senate, 22 voted yes, 2 were in solid opposition on policy grounds, and 1, Senator Awa, supported the measure in committee but voted no on the floor because he was opposed to the level of regulation that we ultimately decided to propose in the bill. So not fundamentally opposed to legalization, but opposed because he had different opinions on the way the framework should have been set up, and is actually, I'm told, proposing his own legislation this year. So if we could find a way to meet minds on this, you have on the record a vote in support for adult use legalization from 23 out of 25 senators in the Hawaii State Senate. In addition, after initially having just about every State Department agency with some sort of connection to a legalization measure, including the Department of Health, the Department of Law Enforcement, Public Safety, and the Attorney General's Office, all submitting testimony in opposition to adult use legalization. After conferring with several of those agencies on the fact that this governor, when campaigning to become the governor, openly supported legalization, we were able to secure a commitment from the Attorney General of the state of Hawaii to work with us in this interim to propose amendments to the legislation that we moved out of the Senate that would put in place the appropriate regime, authority, and regulatory framework that they would be comfortable with. Not necessarily to support, but to not oppose if the legislature elected to legalize adult use cannabis. So as it stands right now, I believe 3 days ago, we received the first draft of a proposal from the State Attorney General's office, which is 294 pages long, and is modeled essentially after the Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts adult use cannabis regime that we're reviewing right now. So I do, I have spoken to other colleagues. I do intend to reintroduce legislation because although the bill that crossed over to the House, as you folks know, is still alive, appropriate protocol for big bills like this is to start all over again in the second year of a legislature. We have 2-year legislative cycles. So just because the bill dies in the first year doesn't mean it dies, it just stops and we readdress it in the next year. But because the bill has changed so dramatically, our intention is to reintroduce the new measure, which is about 154-page overlay on the bill we passed out last year, and to resubmit it to the public for hearings again. Part of the process that we worked on over the summer was collaborative with members of the House. Ultimately, we have to rehear the bill and pass it out of the Senate, so there's never a guarantee, although there is a public position that's been taken on the measure by all 25 members of the Senate. And we will see what, you know, our partner chamber elects to do. I can tell you throughout the process there were a number of different concerns that were brought up from members in the legislature, and you know, people tend to, when the legislature doesn't take action that they want, people tend to just immediately go to the corruption or the black hand as the reason for why the measure didn't go the way they wanted to, or why the individual legislator didn't vote the way they wanted to. But I can tell you a lot of the concerns that were brought up that we tried to address throughout the process were concerns that were reflected in the public testimony by members of our community. There are a lot of different ways to set up a cannabis legalization regime. There are a lot of experts on this panel that can speak to that. And so what we were trying to do was to create a legalization framework that accounted for as many of those different concerns as possible, taking into account several dozen states that have already gone before us and set up their regimes, had successes, had some spectacular failures, and to try to be the most responsible and comprehensive as we possibly could be. Also taking into account the fact that, like I said, if it is eventually taken up by our partner chamber in the House, that they will likely have their own take on how the bill should be done, and will likely make amendments or potentially introduce their own framework that we're going to have to work out. Politics, you know, the legislative process is messy. It's messy by design. It's slow on purpose, and the more engagement and the more transparency we have to the process, I believe the better product you end up with, and the easier it is to have the community coalesce around a general understanding of what it is we want to do and how we do it. So that's where we stand right now. I am happy going forward to share out the draft that we have received for for comment and dialogue. That's not the final draft, and that's not the version that I intend to introduce when we get into the legislative session on January 17th. But it is a framework that has been proposed by the top law enforcement officer in the state of Hawaii, which I think is a significant, that is a measure of significant progress on this issue. That doesn't mean it's going to make everybody happy, right? But we now have a position by the Attorney General of the state of Hawaii that we did not have ever on this issue. So, progress. Thank you.